So while Nate gets that spun up, so my name is Alex DeSmet. I am the Warning Coordination Meteorologist of the National Weather Service in Salt Lake City. What the heck is that, right? So my main goal is the liaison between our users and our meteorologists that produce the products. A little bit of backstory, similar to Dennis. I wanted to do this since I was 8 years old. My grandpa bought me a NOAA Weather Radio for my birthday. Now, almost 40 some years ago, and that's when the nerd alert started. And so about a year later, the local weather service office, which for me growing up was the Detroit, Michigan office, had an open house to show off the new weather radar, and those radars are still in service today across the country. And then a few years later, they had another open house showing off the graphical forecast editor, which is what we use to make the forecast. And we're still using that today for now. There's a lot of changes coming. We actually just had our organization's reorganization plan presented to us last week. So it'll be our first reorganization in over 30 years. And there's some exciting things that are coming along with that reorganization. We were very close to being eliminated as an agency a year ago, so don't know what would have happened to radars, satellites, watches, warnings, advisories. It could have all ended. And it was the tragic floods in Texas last summer that turned that around. And now we're actually we're adding 250 brand new positions that have never existed before, and they're going to be more face-to-face embedded type positions. So for example, so I met with Zion National Park last fall. We talked about this. I learned that they have an emergency operations center with a desk dedicated to a National Weather Service meteorologist, and all of the national park superintendents signed a proof of concept that I wrote, and we sent that to our national director, who's going to be at our office next week actually, and they're promising an embedded meteorologist at Zion National Park, and they're going to be responsible for serving southern Utah, which I can't do in my capacity very well because we still have a lot of travel restrictions, and I want to get out and I want to meet with people in every county that we serve, and it's just not easy to do, so that's going to solve that. We're hoping within a year that person will be selected and spun up and be at the Zion EOC.
They have a full, the degree in it, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It could be a meteorologist, it could be a hydrologist, it could be a physical scientist. So it'll be advertised as all three. So within a year, ideally we'll have more than one person. So if you go way back to our last reorganization in the 90s, there was going to be an office in Salt Lake, which there is, Cedar City or Elko. And Elko got the weather forecast office instead of Cedar City because the growth of southern Utah wasn't anticipated at the time. If we could do it over, we'd have a full WFO weather forecast office is what that stands for, with a full staff in Cedar City. So this is sort of a step in that direction. So if you go to the next slide, we'll have a kind of a general outline in no particular order of what we'll talk about today. And I probably won't take the full half hour so you can get back to your daily lives. But there's a few things that I wanted to mention. And if we go to the next slide, we'll start to get into the topics. So Nate wanted me to touch on alerting, so we'll start there. So we all have one of these, right? And it's capable of receiving weather alerts called wireless emergency alerts, if you have them turned on. And these are the products that will trigger those wireless emergency alerts if your phone is inside the warning polygon. So through FEMA, we're an alerting authority. FEMA's given us the authority to alert phones to these warnings. So in Utah, every one of our flash flood warnings will trigger wireless emergency alerts with this considerable tag. We have ours turned on by default. So does the Grand Junction office. So every flash flood warning will trigger wireless emergency alerts, assuming you have cell phone coverage. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That's one of our unique challenges in southern and southeast Utah, is the lack of cell phone coverage and the vulnerability that we have when we get monsoon heavy rains in slot canyons. So we always like to say have multiple ways to get warnings. I mentioned that NOAA Weather Radio. That's another way that will allow you to receive warnings besides just your cell phone. And so the system that disseminates the alerts to your cell phone is called iPause, and that's a FEMA system. And if we go to the next slide, we'll take a look at our overview. So here we are, this massive area here. It's the second largest area in the lower 48 in terms of responsibility. So it's 25 counties in Utah, and we wanted to be special and throw Southwest Wyoming in there as well. So we also serve them. So we have 2 radars, weather radars. We're one of the only forecast areas that have 2. We have 13 NOAA Weather Radio transmitters. We have a very busy staff of technicians that travel all around the state maintaining this equipment. They're on the road all the time. And so one of our unique challenges is the terrain that we have, the lack of radar coverage in some areas, and just the massive size of our weather forecast office. Like I was saying, if we could do it over, we draw a line right there, we'd have Cedar City here, Salt Lake there, but that's not the way it turned out. And then also Grand Junction has 4 counties that in eastern Utah. So watches, warnings, advisories, routine forecasts, and more is what we do on a daily basis. And we're also unique that we're 24/7, so that means we're working midnight shifts, evening shifts, day shifts as well. If we go to the next slide. So we'll talk about some of our challenges here. So what we're looking at here, each one of these dots is a NOAA weather radar. And we have 2, as I mentioned. We've got one on Promontory Point and another one on Blowhard Mountain, just east of Cedar City. And what we're looking at here, so we can equate the yellow areas to areas of good radar coverage where we can see the entire, slice of the atmosphere where weather happens, and in particular impactful weather. But these areas here in the blue, that's where we're seeing about 10,000 feet. So if it precipitates below that, we have a hard time seeing it. Back in 2021, there was a massive flood event in Hanksville. The radar was showing essentially nothing, and we didn't know it was flooding until we got an alert from UDOT. They called us and said, hey, we just learned that a semi was washed off of Highway 24. And we were like, how? About a minute later, they called back and said, okay, an RV's been washed off the highway. So we're like, okay, there's something going on, clearly. There was also no lightning. We can use lightning data and satellite to augment the lack of radar coverage, but there was no lightning that day, so that didn't help. So we called the county dispatch, and they kind of snippily answered, oh, are you calling us to tell us it's flooding? And we're like, no, we're trying to figure out what's going on. So Hanksville got over 2.5 inches of rain in about an hour, and it was all largely undetected by radar. The radar estimate was a 1/4 inch of rain. And that challenge is true anywhere in these really blue and white areas where there's just little to no radar coverage. The white areas here, there is essentially no radar coverage. There's also a lack of surface-based observations. So we don't have a good idea of what's happening, and that's a problem when we have life-threatening weather happening in this part of the state, largely those monsoonal thunderstorms.
How's it rough?
Yeah, they do. They really do. Yeah, very rough. Now, with our reorganization, we learned that there's a program called Radar Next, and right now they're working on the next generation of radar. We don't know exactly what direction that's going to be, if it's going to be satellite-based radar, or if it's going to be ground-based radar like we have now, that's augmented by private contracted companies that own and maintain radar. But in either way, it's going to solve this issue in the 2030s, we hope.
Do you guys have any satellite radar at all, or access to?
Not at this point. That's a technology that doesn't yet exist.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's something they're considering. And we'll get to ping our director when he's here next week about what more he might know about that. So if we continue on, I mentioned the NOAA Weather Radio. We do have good NOAA Weather Radio coverage in southeast Utah. Those radios will broadcast flash flood warnings and any other warning. The white areas here is little to no coverage, but the pink areas there have good coverage. Thanks also to Grand Junction for having several transmitters in their part of Utah that they're responsible for as well. And as we go to the next slide here, we'll break down. So these are all of the NOAA Weather Radio transmitters in Utah. Another note about these is because it ties back into the radar. The Department of Commerce came down a few months ago and said you've got to remove all the T1 lines that connect to your radar and your NOAA Weather Radio because they're too expensive. So that's what we did. So our two radars right now are operating on their backup comms, which is satellite. If any of you have satellite TV, what happens when the weather gets bad? You might have noticed a couple of times when the weather was bad around Christmas and also a couple of weeks later, the radar went down, it stopped communicating and transmitting data. That is still an issue we're dealing with right now. It's not acceptable to us because our mission is the protection of life and property and the enhancement of the economy. So we can't protect lives if we don't have any data to help with that mission. So we are working on a solution that has primary comms of 4G and backup comms of Starlink, and we're hoping to have that in place at both of our radars later this summer, hopefully before the monsoon season. We may not make it, but we're pushing hard for that.
So those will be on our phones then, rather than on our radar. Like when we get NOAA radar, we get it over like a handheld walkie-talkie that we sometimes use and things like that. We can get it on there. But when you go to Starlink, it'll be on here.
So if you,
Or will it still be on that?
it'll still be on that, yeah,
Same band.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
We'll be able to get the data out,
Okay.
regardless of what's happening, of how bad the weather is. So when do you need it most? When the weather's bad. That's when we're losing the radar right now. So that's a challenge we're working through as well. So it's been a challenging several months, but I think there's a light on the horizon for us. If we continue on, so the Flagstaff office, they've come up with kind of a creative way to work around the lack of internet coverage. So what they've done is they are working with the Coquino County Emergency Management, and when a flash flood warning is issued for a portion of the Colorado River, the emergency manager at the county is taking that, typing it up in their alerting software, and sending that out to the world, to their subscriber base. But they also have an option in their software to send flash flood warnings to satellite-based services. And that's able to be received through the Garmin inReach for those areas that don't have cell phone coverage. This won't be an issue in a couple of years once all phones and all cell phone carriers can receive satellite-based communication, but we're not quite there yet. So this is a nice workaround. I met with the Kane County Emergency Manager yesterday. We talked about this. He does have some interest in working on a solution. One difference is Coquino County is using Rave software to send out alerts. Kane County and most counties in Utah are using Everbridge. That I don't know if Everbridge has that capability, but it does have a capability to, if your Garmin inReach has a phone number associated with it, you can subscribe to the county's Everbridge and receive alerts that way. So that could be a potential solution that I'll follow up with the emergency manager on after our conversation yesterday. So we talked for a couple of hours about all things weather, including this kind of creative way to work around the lack of cell phone coverage. If we continue on, we'll talk about some other alerting resources. So this is called NWS. The I stands for interactive. And what this is, it's a way to receive warnings that we issue, either through text message or email or both. And you can set it up so you can draw a custom polygon. You can choose county as well. And what it'll do is if a warning's issued, so this is, in this example, this is a severe thunderstorm warning that we issued. So if your polygon of interest intersects this warning, you'll get that text message or email within seconds of us issuing it. Now, one tricky thing is you'll have a lot more success getting your account approved if you use like a government or a work or an official email address. If you use like a Gmail address, you may not get it approved. These accounts are approved at the national level. There's about 65,000 subscribers in the country, which is a huge number.
How big
Go ahead.
is the polygon?
The polygon that you draw, there is a size limit to it. So for example, I tried when I went into my NWS account and configured it, I tried drawing two, one for northern and one for southern, and it told me the polygon size was too large. So I broke it down into like 4 sections to cover the whole state. So whenever we issue something, I'll get a text within a couple of seconds to keep me in the know. What's nice about this is the alerts come to you. You don't have to look for them. And it's always on. And if you do get that account approval, and when you set up your account, I just recommend choosing every box so that you'll get every kind of alert and you won't miss something that way. If we continue on. So this QR code here is going to take you to a system called NWS Connect. So right now we have the folks that are signed up for our emails in one system. We have INWS in another system. We have 3 or 4 different systems that we manage. This is going to take all of them and put it under one roof. And that INWS system that I mentioned on the previous slide, that's being sunset this summer. So for any current INWS or future INWS subscriber to be able to maintain that, you'll need to have an account through NWS Connect. And basically what we're using it for right now is simply a contact database, but it's going to be the system that we send our partner emails out through. And if you're an emergency manager, for example, and you need some large outdoor event support, you can request it through NWS Connect. You can even put in your thresholds for wind, lightning radius, etc. So it's all going to be under one roof, which is super cool. And then the Slack component is partner only, so it's not available to the public. But it's a way for you to communicate with us and also follow along with what we're issuing. And it allows you to follow along with conversations we're having with other partners, as you can see from that example there. Continuing on. So flash floods, a lot of you might remember this, Capitol Reef back in 2022. That was not even a monsoon thunderstorm. That was one isolated thunderstorm that sat right over Capitol Reef, had the environment all to itself. So whatever moisture and instability was available, it just gobbled it all up and produced what we see there. So getting reports of what's happening out on the ground is really important to us. If there's even an inkling that flash flooding is about to start, we want to get that warning out there as soon as we can. And then continuing on. So this is something that we issue. This is a product we call a flash flood potential rating. We issue this twice a day from May 1st through November 1st, or during the winter if we have some unusual activity. So what it does is it looks at the next 3 days for known vulnerable locations across southern Utah, and it breaks the flash flood potential down into these 4 categories. And actually just this week we added a link to every area's information page at their request. So if you click that little link, it'll take you to, like in the instance of Zion National Park, it'll take you to the information page so that you know what's open, what's closed, etc. So this on higher impact days, when we're in these orange or red categories, it'll be right at the top of our website, weather.gov/SLC for all to see. We're also doing a Spanish version in parallel as well. And then you can see the link for that, but you can get to it again by going to our webpage rather, weather.gov/SLC, click on flash flooding, and then you'll see the flash flood potential rating there. Go ahead.
Will that come up if you do your local forecast, and if it is in a flash flood, a high red, it's always at the top bar?
It'll be at the top of the home page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you put in your zip code?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's been a lot of talk about wildfire here today. So debris flows become a problem, and flash flooding in general become a problem after a wildfire as the soil becomes hydrophobic. We saw the Forsyth Fire, we saw 4 inches of rainfall on that fire. On Christmas, the fire is over 10,000 feet. So I can't recall the time where we had rain at those elevations. So we had impacts kind of similar to this on Christmas downstream of that fire, just that recently. So luckily the emergency manager and police and fire, we gave them a heads up a couple of days in advance to say, hey, 4 to 5 inches of rain, over 10,000 feet in late December. Unheard of, but this whole past winter has been unheard of. So moving ahead, we also have on our website a list of burn scars that we're monitoring for flash flood potential. And then if you click one more, those are the wildfires that we're currently monitoring. So we have, in partnership with the state purchased several weather stations. We deployed them and we maintained them. And we put a weather station out at each one of these burn scars that reports 1 minute rainfall. And then our hydrologist has worked with various groups to determine thresholds. So when rainfall rates reach a certain threshold, we have a call list that will go through, and those folks will go out there and respond. So right now, these are all of the burn scars. We hope we don't add too many more this year, but those are the ones that we're currently monitoring for flash flooding. And then moving forward. So heat is another one. We're actually talking about it right now. So this is a product called Heat Risk. You can see the website for it there. If you use your favorite search engine and search for NWS Heat Risk, you can find it as well. So what this does is it takes into account your local climatology, how significant heat is for the time of year. So for example, Park City and St. George have completely different climatologies, obviously. That's baked into this product. And then it also bakes in emergency room visit data and CDC mortality data as well, and factors all that in. So in the West, we no longer use heat risk, or heat index, I should say. How many of you have heard of the heat index? Perfect. So we no longer use it. We now use heat risk to inform our heat watches and warnings, because it's more robust in the West, where the climate is dry. I can feel the dry skin on my face, actually, being in this climate that we're in now. And so it ranges from green, which is little to no risk, all the way up to the magenta category. We actually are seeing some moderates start to appear tomorrow down in St. George, as they'll be into the upper 90s, because why not, in March. And we'll reach the mid 90s here as well, it looks like, by late this week and into the weekend. Right.
Great way to end winter.
Right. whatever that even is, winter. So if we go to the next slide here. So partner email briefing, if you're interested in this, I just need your email. So what this is it's an email that we send out nearly every day, less often if the weather's quiet and there's no risk. But what we do is we break up the state into sections that you see on each row, and then we assign each day in each row a risk level from little to none to extreme. And these colors here are a combination of our confidence in the event happening and the risk that the event could pose if it does happen. So when we start getting into the major, into the extreme, those are high-end events that have a high confidence and a high likelihood of occurring. We've never used an extreme, but we've had a couple of majors in there since we started doing this about 4 years ago. And they also have a PDF as well, which is great for sharing this when you receive it. We just had an exercise with a lot of emergency managers, DEM and others. And so we're going to be making some changes, we think, based on that feedback once we get that here in the next week or so. So the consistent feedback was, can we have like 10 rows that never change? So we know right where to look, because this expands and contracts based on the anticipated conditions.
So you can actually put multiple conditions under one zone?
We can, yeah. In this case, it was a little more simple, but we can fit 4 or 5 sort of hazards into one cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Next. So this is another one. These are called excessive rainfall outlooks. Helps you give a better heads up in terms of what's coming in terms of excessive rain. So we have 2 real examples here. This is from just before Christmas, where we are into the marginal risk or the level 1 risk for flash flooding. This one was from last October, where we actually got into the moderate, so a very high category of excessive rainfall. Talking to the folks at the PREA contact station today, there's still 5 feet of water, pools in Buckskin, and it's from that event from last October, as that water hasn't evaporated yet. And then that's the URL for it. Again, you can use your favorite search engine to just search for excessive rainfall outlooks, and then you can find these graphics. These go out, I believe, 4 days, and they're issued twice a day. And we do collaborate with This stands for the Weather Prediction Center. They're in the Washington, D.C. area. We do collaborate with them on these outlooks based on our local expertise. And you can see here, so this was the event that caused the Forsyth Fire. So even a low wind event could potentially result in flooding. This one certainly did. We had a lot of flooding with this particular event. It was around mid-October. It was our last monsoon surge of the season. So that's one thing that we're seeing over time. We're seeing monsoon surges lasting later into the fall than what we used to 30 years ago. Going to the next slide. This is one of my favorites, but I'm a nerd. So the question often gets asked, okay, so you issue a forecast out for 7 days. So if you go to our website, it's going to give you a single value, and it's going to give you a % chance. What we're learning through social science is folks have more trust in the forecast if they're given a full range of outcomes. And so this is what this tool allows you to look at. So this is an example here. So it goes out 10 days. So if we use this as an example here, these are the high temperatures for the next 10 days given in a range. So the more narrow the range, the more confident the forecast is, the wider range, the opposite. So what we're looking at here is like the 10th and the 90th percentile. We can do this for any of these forecast parameters that are on here. We've got cloud cover, we've got wind speed and gusts, hourly temperatures, etc. There's even more if you were to scroll down. But it will also, what this does, if you click on this icon here, which is kind of blurry, it looks like scales. Let's say you care about rainfall of 1/4 of an inch or more. What this will do is it'll give you the probability of that happening over the next 10 days. And you can do that for any number of parameters.
So is this like our daily, hourly forecast that we can also click on our websites, but like on a longer term, a long period, and maybe you change it?
Our website's eventually going to integrate this into it in a few years, but for now it's a separate website. And again, if you just Google that or use your favorite search engine, just Google NBM 1D viewer. Once you get there, it's just outside of the screenshot, but there's a little hamburger icon. You click that to open a map with green dots on it. Click on the green dot of interest, and it'll load the forecast for that location. Because in reality, there's a wide range of forecast outcomes. There's different amounts of uncertainty from day to day. This will paint that picture for you. And that's one area where we can give you more informed information beyond what your phone app can. So it's a way to kind of keep us relevant too. So if you go to the next slide. So just kind of a roundup of our decision support services. This is another one that I didn't talk about, which is largely, again, for our core partners. If there's a wildfire, a search and rescue, a hazmat situation, folks can go to this website and request a forecast specific to that location, and that forecast will go out over the next 2 days. So it's just a variety of the circumstances for which those can be used for. We did about 1,000 of those last calendar year, so there was certainly a need for those. Excuse me. And then if you continue on here, so these are clearly all things that impact us here in southern Utah: flash flood, heat, lightning, wildfires, winter storms. Back, if you can remember what those are. Do y'all have any other issues that we don't know about, weather-wise, in this part of the state?
Wind.
Yeah.
High winds.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's one that.
Worse and worse.
Yeah, it's one that we could definitely add. We had a lot of wind just the other day as well. So if we move on, again, there's our website, weather.gov/SLC. This is what we call a weather story, which will be above the map. So that flash flood potential rating, when we reach those higher thresholds, that'll be right there, front and center for you. No worries. Community engagement is called Weather Radio Nation Ambassador. You can sign up to be a Weather Radio Nation Ambassador, and basically what you become is a conduit of life-saving information for the community, and you can register for that there as well. And this isn't relegated to just core partners. Any member of the public and organizations like nonprofits, for example, can become a Weather Radio Nation Ambassador. We can also sign up nonprofits for our core services. They'd fall under the VOAD category, so the Volunteers Active in Disasters. So the one caveat there that I didn't mention earlier. And if we go to the next slide, we also have a whole host of safety infographics here on this website, and our translation team has worked to translate those products into a variety of languages. We know we have people from all over the world that visit southern Utah, and so our national parks in particular have asked for infographics that meet the needs of various visitors from around the world. So you can find those there. You can print those off. You can post them through, wherever you're allowed to do that. You can distribute them via email or whatever you like to do. They're all there for you. They're all free. All of our services are free because as taxpayers, you're funding our agency about $4 per year, and then you get about $80 back in life-saving services from us. So not to brag, but that's why we're everyone's favorite government organization. So you go to the next slide. We'll just talk a little bit about recapping the last few months, then an outlook into the spring, and then we'll let you go. So if you look back at what we saw from October through February here on the left, for central Utah, the storms really just missed them. So for the most part, they're sitting below normal. In southern Utah, this was really just a couple of storms. That big monsoon event that I mentioned in October, that held through the winter and kept us actually above normal in terms of precipitation. So while we didn't get much snow, we got more rain than normal over this period. So our soil moistures are actually in really good shape across the state. Not so much in central Utah, but northern Utah, that's a couple of rain events. Most of our events up north were rain this summer. We only got 2.9 inches of snow at the Salt Lake Airport, which is a record low. Second place is so far beyond that. We're just in completely uncharted territory. And then the big screaming map here is our temperature anomalies from October through February. So anybody in this color had a record warm winter, which is just about everybody. And there's no historical comparison. It was the warmest by a very wide margin. And not only that, but our snowpacks at record low values as well across the state. The basin we're in right now is at 37% of median, and we're already losing it. So our melt is happening about a month earlier than normal this year. So completely uncharted territory. No historical comparison since about 1880 for what we experienced last winter, in quotes. And then going forward, so far in March, this is what it looks like. This is the precipitation compared to normal across southern Utah, which is to say we basically got none. And then we did have another rain event in northern Utah earlier in the month, which has contributed to above normal precipitation there. But again, most of it was rain. And then temperatures, this is not even including our current heat wave. We're already at or near record warm March before this. So pretty crazy stuff. And then moving forward, our current drought outlook looks like this. So the worst parts are central Utah, which makes sense based on the precipitation departures that we've seen there. Those areas are in extreme drought. The whole state is in some level of drought. It just varies depending on where exactly you're located. And then moving ahead, the seasonal outlook. Oh man. So this is March, April, and May. If we extend this into June, it doesn't look any better. So on the left, there is high confidence for temperatures to be above normal when we average the temperatures out through May. Not to say that there won't be an occasional cool down, an occasional wet period, but when you average it out, high confidence in it being above normal. And that confidence increases as you go south. And then in terms of precipitation, just a continuation of what we've been seeing for the past several months, high confidence in precip being below normal rather through May, and again into June there's no change. I was looking at some climate models earlier. They are trying to indicate that there's potentially going to be an above active monsoon, so with above normal precipitation. But they were advertising that last year too. And the center of the high pressure was nudged just a little bit too far east for us. So New Mexico and Colorado had a very active monsoon where we did not. So it's all going to come down to where that high pressure ridge sets up. If it sets up right about here, that'll put us into a favorable flow to get moisture off the Gulf of California and set up an above average monsoon. So that's kind of the caveat. But the potential is at least there if the flow sets up correctly for us to get an active monsoon, which is good for water, bad for flooding. We could never just have it all, right? It's one or the other. So often, as soon as the pattern shifts, and then we're dealing with flooding, and in the prior weeks we were dealing with hot and dry. And I think we're getting close to the end. Of course, with the hot and dry, it should be no surprise that by the time we get to June, most of southern Utah is painted for above normal significant fire activity. In talking to the folks that made this last week, they're considering expanding the areas that they're concerned about, so filling in this gap and expanding it north. I didn't show you May or April because it's just listed as normal, but they're also considering maybe making some adjustments there as well. If we get a very active monsoon like what we got in 2022, 2023, completely ended fire weather season. So that's the one side benefit to above active monsoon. But consider how active last year's fire weather season was. We're setting up even worse going into that season. Of course, we can't predict where and when and how fires will ignite, but if they do, the conditions are there for significant spread potentially. Now I think we're getting to the end. Yes. So you have my contact information there, and then contact information for our office. We're located on the southeast part of the Salt Lake Airport facility. Any other questions? Comments?
Who runs
Sure.
the forecast discussion?
Forecast discussion is whoever gets assigned that duty on that particular day, so all of us.
You guys can assign your names to it. So
Yeah.
Pick our favorite forecast discussion guy.
It's at the bottom.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Initials are at the
We vote you
bottom.
Up and down. That'd be
Maybe in the weather.gov 2.0, we'll have that. Everyone's just going to be smashing that down arrow on mine.
great. Like, oh, get Alex back. Make him do the night shift again.
I need to. It's been a while. Go ahead.
There's a million apps and websites.
Yeah.
Weather Underground, AccuWeather. Are they pulling or getting data from some of these? Are they pulling data from your sources or?
Yeah, so any radar that you see is all Weather Service radar. As far as the forecast information, so one of the nice things about our modeling center is all of our weather data is free for anyone to use. The Europeans charge for their modeling data. So likely the companies are getting those and then putting their own spin on it. So I worked for a private weather company. That's where I started my career. And we took in all the Weather Service model data and put our own tweaks. So it wasn't exactly the same, but we were using that as a basis. Yeah.
Pick your favorite.
Yeah, I can't recommend an app, one over another, but yeah, whatever works for you, whatever you like. I got a lot of 4-letter words when I was in the private company from folks that didn't like the forecast. Well, we were forecasting for plow drivers and their superintendents, and also airport superintendents like O'Hare, Boston Logan, for example. So if it didn't work out exactly the way they wanted to, it was, so yeah, thick-skinned from those years in the private sector. And that's really why I came over to the Weather Service. I identified with the mission of lives and property over profits. Go ahead.
So you talked about fire forecasting, but you don't seem to do any other kind of fire or smoke reporting, air quality or anything along those lines. I'm just wondering why that's not under the umbrella of the Weather Service.
Yeah, so air quality is all under the DEQ, each individual state's DEQ. And then most states have an agreement with their DEQ to where the DEQ will issue air quality alerts, ask the Weather Service to disseminate those because we have the dissemination capability. So for example, avalanche watches and warnings, the Utah Avalanche Center will email us those watches and warnings, we'll type them out, hit send, and then they get out to the world. But we don't have an agreement with the DEQ to disseminate air quality alerts. They just got new leadership, and I'm going to be working on getting us all together in a room to talk about that, because we're one of the few states that don't have that agreement with the DEQ.
It's such a huge concern for us.
Yeah. Don't know the reasons why there's never been an agreement in place, but it's on my to-do list for sure. Sure.
Does FEMA send out all of those warnings you said?
That's a good question. FEMA does have an app through which you can sign up for weather alerts. That we don't need to be like a core partner to get them from us. They'll take our alerts and then send them out through iPause. So I meant to mention that, so I'm glad you asked, because they do have an app. The Weather Service does not have an app for a lot of different reasons, but you never know. It could be something that comes out of our reorganization plan. And that there's going to be where offices are going to be 3 different tiers. We're going to fall into the middle tier. We learned that much. And so what that means is we'll gain 1 additional meteorologist and possibly 2 more that are dedicated to fire weather. So we'll find out more next week. But the good news for us is we'll be getting more people. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm most excited about the Zion position that we pushed for.
Where can people apply for that job? Send people that way?
USA Jobs. Yep. Once it hits the USA Jobs. We're also going to have someone embedded at the State Division of Emergency Management. That's going to be hitting USA Jobs within the next month. So that'll be a Weather Service employee who works at the State Emergency Operations Center. So lots of cool things happening with our agency going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.